Welcome to this week's episode of the Compliance Digest, presenting topics on all things compliance related. My name is Alex Krenke, and joining me this week is Staci Simmons, the Marketing Manager at Quest CE. Staci, welcome.
Thank you.
If you're wondering why Staci's here, her and her team are responsible for the Compliance Digest, which is the weekly alerts we send out on Tuesday, the video production you're watching right now, and of course the marketing initiatives that we push out on a monthly basis. So, Staci, you're not here to spam our viewers with any marketing propaganda that you may have.
Not today.
That's not why you're here, but you are here to discuss marketing and advertising in regards to FINRA. If you could just elaborate more on that.
Well, Alex, of the last 3 weeks, we've seen a surge in viewership for the Compliance Digest weekly alerts on articles relating to compliance marketing fines brought down by FINRA. Now, we use the term hot topic quite a bit. However, these enforcement actions have been actually ranked #1 for the past 3 years.
So what do you attribute to this being an area of heightened supervision?
Really because marketing and advertising material sets the tone for who these firms are and the products that they offer to the general public. Marketing and advertising is a tool used by sales teams, and because it is used by sales teams quite often, it's highly leveraged and sometimes inappropriately.
Okay, inappropriately, what do you mean?
The language and context of these types of materials can easily be misleading. Last year, for example, FINRA had found a firm was making false claims about their return on investment, market value, and the performance of real estate investment trusts. The flags that really grabbed their attention is that this company was characterizing these rights as fabulous cash cows and gold mines, which of course are terms that would garner the attention of any investor. However, these type of terms also tend to overpromise and quite often underdeliver.
So let's look at some numbers here. I saw that in 2011, FINRA posted fines in upwards of $21 million in regards to marketing and advertising. 2010, this number had quadrupled. So clearly the focus is on marketing and advertising. And when we're looking at the audience, it's not just the big firms out there that the FINRA is going after. It's the small firms that this is affecting, all the way up to the market leaders out there that are seeing this increased rate of fines. So what are some guidelines that are being put into place to better track and monitor these materials?
This year, FINRA has actually put in place a pretty large overhaul. There's now a series of elaborate broker advisor guidelines. These guidelines have implemented new procedures specifically to be placed on compliance checklists. Anything that is retail target advertising is now going to be highly monitored. These materials used to be categorized as sales literature or advertising or any of the other 4 categories. Now we're down to 3. We now have retail communication, institutional communication, and simply correspondence.
And it's an interesting twist here. So the way we used to categorize it was by the type of medium or the message that you're sending out there. Now we're looking at the audience that's where you're receiving the marketing message. So the new rules, did they cover how this literature is going to be filed more as like a general rule, or is it specific depending on the type of communication?
Of course, it's much more specific. We are talking about FINRA here. These new guidelines cover the language, the disclosure information, and your distribution plans for these types of materials. The newest add-on is a reason to believe standard. This new standard, though met with some uncertainty, does highlight the need for policies and procedures that are designed specifically to prevent the institutional communication materials from being forwarded to the retail investor. So any sales pitch, internal, institutional, or otherwise, which does end up in front of a retail customer, even if by mistake, has to be reviewed by FINRA at least 10 days prior to use. This is because any context that is put in front of a retail investor suddenly is considered retail public communications.
It's a tightrope to walk, and depending specifically on the type of firm you have and the complexity that you have within the structure there. So if you have a retail-facing side and an institutional side, you're most likely creating pieces that are meant for separate audiences. What you don't want, and what all these fines, or the majority of these fines, are coming from, is a message that's intended for an institutional audience ending up in retail hands. So what your firm has to consider is, how do I prevent that from happening? How do I stop the retail audience out there from receiving this message that's probably too complex for the basic investor out there? And I think what we're seeing right now is that it's becoming more important for sales teams and marketing teams to have a greater understanding of the materials that are out there, to know the distribution channels for sending out these materials, making sure that it's not getting into the wrong hands. And if it does get into the wrong hands and FINRA finds out, you're going to be one of the statistics that we're talking about right now. So what's your recommendation on handling these marketing products? Should we be more diligent, or how do we stop this?
Definitely become more diligent. I think that for the most part, your firm should have a series of checks and balances in place. You want to make sure that you know exactly what has been approved by FINRA, and any changes you make to these materials, the context, or even if there is changes to your product line, you're going to want to make sure that these materials are also re-cross-checked by FINRA and approved before being sent out to market.
So another thing that we really have to consider is social media. It was a hot topic last year when we were figuring out basically how do we treat social media. I think we know that now. How do we categorize it? What should be the rules or the message to our reps that we should be communicating to them?
Social media, just like anything else, is considered marketing. It's intuitive to keep tabs on the product claims being made by your employees as well as by any third-party seller. You want to make sure that they're communicating correctly too and not misleading the public. Luckily, in the past year, FINRA has had a large push towards having social media procedures in place, policies, making sure you're tracking what your employees are saying and doing. These type of procedures, you try to implement them to defer these type of actions. You don't want to mislead the public, even on social media. Even QuestCE, we actually have a social media policy that we put into place a little over a year ago. We also follow industry trends, and we want to be sure that we're doing the same types of actions that you're being asked to do. So we have these communication guidelines in place to make sure the company and our products are being communicated clearly to you.
It's true, and I think that that's where we really see a lot of similarities between, our company, QuestCE, and then our customers out there. And it really is industry-wide. It doesn't matter what industry you work in. You're going to have a marketing department that's going to want to push the envelope because that's their job. They want to get the message out there. They want to create the most attractive message to help sell the product. And then you're going to have a compliance department that wants to review it and make sure you're not saying anything that's not true or saying anything that will mislead the public. FINRA's the same way. And the same thing with their broker-dealers out there. They have to be aware of the message that's being portrayed to their customers out there. And FINRA, their number one priority always has been looking out for the customer's best interest. So you want to make sure that you're ready for the increased oversight from FINRA, especially looking at the past few years, how we've seen fines increase year over year. You want to have good policy in place and make sure your reps know how the marketing pieces work, who they should be distributed to, and then what the proper channels are.
Exactly.
So that's our message to the audience this week. If you're in compliance and you're working with marketing, make sure you have a good relationship there. Make sure that everyone at your firm is aware of how to distribute the marketing materials, and you can avoid any fines that will be out there in the industry this year. That'll cover it for this week's episode. Join us next week for another episode of the Compliance Digest.